talk about what happened. Let's bring in former NTSB Chair Robert Sumwalt and Samantha Vinograd. She's the former Assistant Secretary in the Department of Homeland Security and a CBS News contributor. Good morning to you both. Sam, I want to go to you first. Those are incredible pictures. That's the aftermath of a collision that happened at 1:30 a.m. We've heard so far no indication of anything nefarious. They don't think it's terrorism, but that's a determination in this day and age that has to be made. Take us through how that's made. What's the process?
Well, in a mass casualty event like this, there are various lines of effort underway involving federal, state, and local officials. Primary focus right now, Tony, is on search and rescue and reunifying anyone that was on that bridge, near that bridge, with their family. I would imagine an incident response team has been set up to help coordinate those efforts. And at a certain point, we're over 5 hours since the incident occurred, the agents are going to have to make a call on when to call off search and rescue based upon the temperature of the waters and the time that has passed. In addition to that, concurrently, Tony, we know that there's ongoing investigations about how this happened. Interviews being conducted with the pilots of the ship, with the crew, and with survivors. Concurrently, we should also expect that immediately the Department of Transportation, in coordination with Maryland authorities, are looking at how to safely divert traffic that would have passed over that bridge. I will note, having weeks or months of congestion at other infrastructure points in the area is unto itself a security risk and has economic implications as well.
Wow. Sam, thank you very much. Robert, I want to go over to you now as we see these aerial pictures. That's how the bridge went into the water, and in the other live shots, we're seeing what it looks like at the moment. This is a massive, massive piece of infrastructure now in the harbor there in Baltimore. What do you know, Robert, about the process by which a major cargo ship like this would be brought out of the port of Baltimore? You mentioned earlier in a conversation we had there might be an American pilot on board. Just talk to us about that process, what we could know standard operating procedure-wise at this hour.
Yeah, Tony. So what happens is we have a state licensed pilot. In this case, it's a pilot who is licensed by the state of Maryland. He is extremely well qualified and knows that territory like the back of his or her hand. They have to undergo training for about 7 years to even be qualified. This pilot boards the ship at the port, at the dock, at the pier, and then issues orders, commands to the helmsman, the person actually steering the ship. And then they will take the ship out to port. That pilot actually disembarks and gets onto a small boat and goes back to land. It's a process that has worked well many, many centuries. And wow. So they will be, they'll be looking at the exchange between the pilot and the crew of the ship to see how that interacted.
Robert, speaking of a standard operating procedure, oftentimes there is precedent for mass casualty events. Our first responders train for situations, but have you ever seen something specifically like this in your career?
Well, we dealt at the NTSB. I was at the NTSB for 15 years. We dealt with a situation where a ship ran into one of the piers, the pier bumpers for the Bay Bridge out in Oakland. But fortunately, the bridge did not collapse. So that distinguishes this one from the one we dealt with in 2006.
Robert, you mentioned the process for getting a ship out of a harbor like this, a process that's been working for centuries. That harbor goes back to the 1600s. That bridge is almost 50 years old. No one's hit it like this. It makes me think that this was not a pilot issue, but maybe a mechanical problem on the boat. Do you see anything that would point in that direction?
Well, that remains to be seen. What I do notice from the video is that right before the collision, there's a lot of smoke coming out of the funnel, coming out of the smokestack. And what that indicates to me is there was an order on the bridge of the ship that to increase the power significantly. And what that does is it gets more RPMs across the propeller, from the propeller, which then helps to increase the steerability of the ship. So I did notice that. What's actually going to come out of this, that remains to be seen.
The fire chief earlier didn't give too much information about what was actually said, possibly on the call. Do we expect to know within the next couple of hours what was said moments before that happened to give a sense of what may have caused this?
Well, there's a couple of different types of communications. There is the communications between like 911 and, well, there's ship-to-shore communications that we should be able to hear, but what we may never hear, probably will never hear, would be the communications between the pilot and the helmsman.
All right, former NTSB Chief Robert Sumwalt, Samantha Vinograd, always great to have you both. Under these circumstances, your analysis is incredibly important. We appreciate it.